Hi, happy Friday. This is my weekly live stream, and I'm live streaming on Instagram as well as on Facebook. So you can feel free to leave comments, questions during the conversation. Happy to answer those here live. Really, I started doing these live streams as a way to connect with my students who are all over the world, and it's so wonderful to have this medium and this amazing, fantastic and remarkable way to be able to connect. So please join me every Friday at noon. Next week might be a little sketchy. I'm not sure. I'm going to be in Brazil. I'll be teaching next week in Sao Paulo, well, near Sao Paulo. And I just am not quite sure about whether or not I'll be connected, whether or not I'll be teaching at that exact time, because there's a time change from where I am. So anyway, as much as possible, I'll get a live stream out next Friday, but it might not be at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so today's topic is called Embodied Cognition. I'm really excited to talk about this, and had a few questions this week just about what it means, and how we can utilize yoga as a way to facilitate embodied cognition. So embodied cognition is a theory from psychology, but really when you get into it, it's something that we all know. I mean, it's very obvious, particularly those of you who are yoga teachers. It's very sort of obvious and clear that this is something that we've been teaching and practicing for a long time. So, let me start with a little history, which is that the bias in the Western scientific community has been for 400 years, this cognitive or this brain bias, which is sort of like whatever happens from here up is determining the state of the individual. What we've started to discover scientifically, although I would say yogis have known this for centuries, for millennia, but what we started to discover scientifically in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, is that the condition of the body affects our thoughts, our feelings, and our decision making and our behaviors. So what's going on here, particularly the enteric nervous system, the gut brain, that it's such an important structure, the enteric nervous system, that they actually named it the second brain. And they've found that much of your dopamine and about 90% of your serotonin is produced in this enteric nervous system, which, by the way, lined with nerve cells and runs from your esophagus all the way down to the exit. It runs through the whole system. So what we know is that the condition of these structures is always throwing up into consciousness cues about what to do, what to think, how to behave. So if that brain bias that we had for so many hundreds of years was like, yeah, this is in charge of that, and now we're seeing that's not the case at all. And I would suggest that the ancient people very well understood this, that thoughts, feelings, and behavior are percolating up from the gut brain, and from other systems as well, but primarily from the gut brain, and providing feedback. And then often our conscious thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are predicated upon the condition of these structures and the messages that these structures are sending sending up. Now, so this is a process that the neuroscientists call bottom up, right? So, which always cracks me up because it sounds like a British drinking game. I wrote a blog about it. So this idea, yeah. And Jennifer just asked, how's that related to the vagus nerve? I'll talk about that in a moment. So this idea that the body is affecting the mind all the time. And so embodied cognition means what am I embodying and how is that affecting my cognition? But it can also work in a top-down manner. And I would suggest that actually these things work together, top down and bottom up. So what we can do is use an intention, use a cognition, if you like, and that might be something like gratitude. It might be something like kindness, self-acceptance, all these things, you know what you need. And then when you use that cognition and you bring some kind of movement into the body, for example, a slow mindful yoga practice, holding that cognition and allowing the cells in your body to steep in the tea of that cognition, then you're facilitating this feedback system. So, there's this meme that I love, and I'm sure you've seen it. It's a cat standing up on a sink looking in the mirror, and it says, I is kind, I is smart, I is important. And it always makes me crack up when I see it. Why does that make us laugh? Well, because we know that cats are totally embodied. Like, they don't have a lot of front brain. Like, look at your cat. Their head doesn't go like this. It goes like this. It doesn't, there's not much up there. My cat feels offended when I say that, but they don't have those sort of rational cognitive processes with lots of working memory, and they're working things out all the time and self-reflecting. That's not what your cat's doing. Your cat is embodying the cognition of contentment or playfulness or grumpiness or whatever it is all the time. I mean, it's just natural for them. So, the thing is that the reason that meme is so funny is because we know it doesn't work for cats. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that well for human beings either. We have some capacity to make it work, but it works best when it's interfacing with what's going on in the body. The body has to agree with those messages. Otherwise, it throws up signals that are just like, you're such a loser. You're going, I am really kind and smart and important. And your body's like, no, you're not. You're a loser. Because those are the intrinsic messages that the body sends up. And we have to override those messages. How do you override those messages? You give the body the feelings of being cared for, and kindness and acceptance and comfort. The body has to have those visceral experiences. And in having those visceral experiences, it starts to create those neuroplastic changes that we need to actually embody that cognition. So embodied cognition is a great field of psychology. I think we're going to hear much more about it in the coming years, and there'll be lots more research, I'm sure. Now, Jennifer asked, how is it related? How is this topic related to the vagus nerve? So there are receptors that send messages up into the brain, and the vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system, has 5 superhighways, and 4 of them run south to north. So that means they're constantly taking afferent messages, that means the afferent nerve messages, up into the brain. And then they get processed via, there's different structures, but one of the main structures is the insula and the anterior cingulate cortex. And when the messages are below the level of consciousness, they get processed in the posterior part of the insula. The insula is like this little cortical island that kind of sits here underneath stuff. You got to peel back parts of the cortex to get to it. So when those messages get processed through the posterior part of the insula, they tend to be subconscious. So those are the messages your body's sending messages to your brain. I'm not safe. I'm not safe. And your brain's like, I'm in a state of panic. I'm anxious. And that kind of feeling like I'm anxious. I'm not. That is but percolating up. You don't even know where it came from. And often it's coming from those feelings in the body. Now, when the insula starts to process those messages more towards the anterior part of the brain, it interfaces with a little part of your brain that curls under here, under your eyes. It's called the orbitofrontal cortex, right? That little part of your brain that curls under and connects is the part that can help you to make conscious decisions. You've got to make more connections with that part of your brain. How do you do that? This is why I love slow, mindful practice, slow, conscious movement so much. Start sending signals up into the brain that say, oh, I'm safe, actually. I'm cared for. I'm nurtured. And the brain's like, oh, I can dig that. I'm down with that. The front brain. And the front brain's like, yeah, no need for anxiety. We can change the cognition now because the body's giving us these positive messages. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's like kind of the rundown on the vagus nerve. And oh, good, Jennifer, I'm glad you liked it. It's kind of the rundown on the vagus nerve and embodied cognition. Of course, this is related to very important concept called interoceptive awareness, which I've been blogging about and writing about and talking about a lot. I give a big download about all this stuff in my online course, which is called the Yoga and Neuroscience Connection. If you want a link to that, I'll put it up on my Facebook page. I want to thank you for being here today. I'll be in, as I said, next week I'll be in Brazil. I'll try and figure out some way to live stream from there. Maybe when I'm dancing or something with all the wonderful people down there. I love going to Brazil. It's a wonderful place to teach and such a lovely culture. So anyway, thank you for being here today. It's always so lovely to have you. And please leave questions, and happy to see you again next week. Okay, namaste. I'm waving, and then I'm going to say goodbye to Instagram. Okay. And Facebook, thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. Namaste.